It is 1:23 in the morning, the 26th of April, 1986. In the control room of Reactor Number 4 at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant in Soviet Ukraine, a small team of engineers is running a safety test. A test. The thing they are doing in this room, at this moment, is the procedure designed to make the plant safer. 40 seconds later, the reactor they are testing tears itself apart. 2 explosions blow the 1,000-ton lid clean off the core and punch a hole in the roof of the building. Burning graphite and reactor fuel are thrown into the night sky, and an invisible plume of radiation begins to drift across the sleeping town of Pripyat, and then across Europe. It would become the worst nuclear accident in history, and the detail that should stop you cold is this. Nobody in that control room was trying to take a risk. They believed they were following a safety procedure. They were never told that the reactor they were operating had a flaw that could turn their own safety test into a bomb. This is Chernobyl, and this is the chain that pulled it down. Chernobyl was the pride of Soviet nuclear power. 4 giant reactors on the Pripyat River, with the purpose-built town of Pripyat beside them, home to nearly 50,000 people, most of them plant workers and their families. It was a model of Soviet progress. The reactors were a Soviet design called the RBMK. They were powerful and cheap to run, but they had a dangerous quirk buried in the way they worked. At very low power, this type of reactor became unstable and hard to control. Worse, the control rods meant to shut the reactor down had a design fault. For the first few seconds as they slid in, they could briefly make the reaction stronger before slowing it. It was a safety system that, for one critical moment, did the opposite of safety. Western experts knew reactors should never be built without certain safeguards. The men who had run the test that night did not know about the control rod flaw at all. It was effectively a state secret. You cannot avoid a danger you have been forbidden to learn about. The first link was an unfinished piece of homework. When a power plant loses electricity, there is a brief, dangerous gap, less than a minute, before the emergency diesel generators come up to full power. In that gap, the pumps that cool the reactor could lose power. Chernobyl wanted to prove that the spinning momentum of its own turbines could bridge that gap, powering the pumps for those few seconds until the generators took over. It was a reasonable thing to want to confirm. But the test had been tried in 1982, 1984, and 1985, and had failed each time. By April 1986, it was still unproven, a box that needed ticking before the reactor went down for routine maintenance. So the test was scheduled for that maintenance shutdown, treated as an electrical exercise on the turbines rather than what it truly was, a delicate operation on a live nuclear reactor. Framing it as routine was the first decision that mattered. The second link grew directly out of it. The test was meant to run during the day with the experienced daytime crew who had prepared for it. But that afternoon, the regional electricity grid asked Chernobyl to keep producing power a little longer. The test was delayed by 10 hours. That delay pushed the entire procedure onto the night shift, a crew that by most accounts had not been properly briefed on the test and had never expected to perform it. The carefully prepared people went home. The people who inherited the test were handed an unfamiliar, half-finished procedure in the middle of the night. On a spreadsheet, a 10-hour delay is nothing. In practice, it meant the most delicate operation of these men's careers would be run by the team least prepared for it. The second link. To run the test, the operators had to bring the reactor down to a low power level. During the chaotic handover, the power was allowed to fall much further than the plan called for, down to almost nothing into exactly the unstable zone where this type of reactor becomes treacherous. The correct, cautious response to a reactor that has dropped into an unstable state is to shut it down and start again slowly. That would have meant abandoning the test for another day, another delay, more lost time, an admission that the night had gone wrong. Instead, the decision was made to pull the reactor back up and press on. To raise the power again, operators withdrew nearly all the control rods, the very things that let you control the reaction. The reactor was now balanced in a fragile, unstable state, held up by almost nothing, with its main brakes pulled out of the core. The third link, and the one that set the trap. To keep the test from being interrupted, the team disabled safety systems that would otherwise have stopped the reactor automatically, including the emergency core cooling system, switched off so it would not interfere with the results. Each of these systems exists for one purpose: to act when human judgment fails or events move too fast for people to react. One by one, they were turned off so the test could be completed cleanly. Picture the panel, the automatic protections that should have caught what was coming, reading disabled, 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 not by accident, but on purpose to protect the test. The reactor was now unstable, stripped of its control rods and cut off from its automatic protections, all at the same time, all in the name of finishing a safety procedure. The fourth link. With the reactor in this state, the operators began the test. The steam to the turbine was cut and the pumps began to slow. Inside the core, the reaction began to climb. The unstable behavior of the reactor at low power was now working against the men in the room, and it was moving faster than they could understand. Seconds later, an operator pressed the emergency shutdown button, the command to drive all the control rods back into the core and kill the reaction instantly. It was the right instinct. But this was the hidden flaw. As the rods entered, their graphite tips briefly accelerated the reaction instead of stopping it. The one action meant to save the reactor was, for a few catastrophic seconds, the thing that detonated it. Power surged to many times the reactor's maximum. Heat and pressure spiked beyond anything the core could hold. The last safeguard had become the trigger. At 1:23 and 40-odd seconds in the morning, the core ruptured. Two explosions in quick succession blew the giant upper shield off the reactor, tore open the building, and threw burning graphite and fuel across the site and onto nearby roofs. The reactor core was now open to the sky, on fire, pouring radioactive material into the air. Firefighters arrived within minutes, not understanding that the debris they were standing among was lethally radioactive. Many received fatal doses that night. The town of Pripyat was not evacuated for a day and a half, its residents going about ordinary life beneath an invisible plume. Eventually, more than 100,000 people were moved out, and an exclusion zone roughly 30 kilometers across was drawn around the plant, a zone that remains in place today. The immediate death toll was small in number. The true cost, the cancers, the contaminated land, the lives uprooted, unfolded over decades and is still debated, with estimates ranging from thousands into the tens of thousands. At Chernobyl, secrecy and schedule pressure removed the defenses around a reactor. But you do not need a reactor for this pattern. Sometimes the chain runs through something as ordinary as a phone call about a building, a small change to a drawing that no one stops to check, in a hotel full of people. That's next.